So, where is the best place to sell jewelry in 2025, 2026, just in general? I get this question all of the time, not only by beginner jewelry resellers or beginner jewelry flippers, but also seasoned or veterans, I guess I could say, of jewelry reselling. I still get asked, where is the best place for me to make the most money, get the most exposure, as it relates to selling my jewelry. That's what we're going to talk about today because I know this can be confusing, it can be overwhelming, and it's also something that seems to differ for all of us. We all don't have the same inventory. We all don't have the same schedule. We all don't have the same levels of availability to be everywhere at the same time. So we really want to focus on what is the best place, where should we focus our efforts and our time to get the best return when it comes to reselling jewelry. All right, that's the direction we're going to go today, jewelry friends. Hello, my name is Desiree, and you know that I am your jewelry reselling bestie. So, today in this episode, I want to talk about some of the best places, or could I even say that these places are quote unquote the best? Because I'm going to give you a little bit of spoiler. It's not just one place, it's not just one platform. All right, so as we move into the new year, or maybe depending on when you're watching this, as you move into making better, bigger, bolder decisions concerning your jewelry reselling business and where you should put your time, I'm going to give you some things to think about. All right. So before we get into that, I like to always remind you to check out our website, jewelryresellerspodcast.com, because over there you can opt into our newsletter. All right. And when you do, you will get instant access to a download I created that covers the 20 best-selling vintage jewelry brands that I think all resellers should know. And if you are looking for support, or if you want to learn how to get started, or maybe you just want some guidance and some accountability as it relates to your jewelry reselling business, well, you can check out my brand new learning community. It's called Jewelry Jumpstart, and you can get more information and you can even join for free at jewelryjumpstart.com. Okay, so let's get into today's topic because I have a lot of things here in my notes, and some of this stuff you may have heard before, but what I want to do is give you a new perspective and a new angle to make this decision when you are thinking about where should you sell your jewelry to make the most money, because at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. And like I said in the spoiler, it's not just one place. A lot of this is going to depend on you and what you can do, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, and all of these other things. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So, jewelry resellers now, like, we have so many options, not just jewelry resellers, but resellers in general. And I think this is the part that trips a lot of us up because there's so many platforms, there's so many ways we can do this business that sometimes having too many choices creates decision fatigue or overwhelm, overload, or even confusion because not all of us sell everywhere. We don't know what's going to work best for us. And so the goal of today's episode is to understand which channel is going to fit your goals and your needs, because it's going to be different if you're clearing out a personal collection, if you're just starting this as a side hustle, or if you are building a full-time jewelry reselling empire, right? It's going to be different depending on where you are and where you want to go. So, the first place, which I think we all know, and I think this is going to continue to dominate in 2026, is the major reselling platforms. All right, eBay, Etsy, Poshmark, Mercari, Whatnot, District, wherever. All right. So the major platforms are always going to be an option, right? They each have their own unique ecosystem. They each have their pros and their cons. Again, it just depends on exactly what type of jewelry you're selling and can you be consistent on that specific platform. In my learning community, I had that question where someone had asked me, where should I sell my jewelry? Because I feel like I'm too scattered. I feel like even with certain tools, I'm all over the place, and that does happen. That happened to me, and I know a lot of you can relate to that. All right. So, like I said, the major reselling platforms are always going to be an option, and honestly, I think that especially a site like eBay is going to work for the most part for everyone. But we all know that eBay is not always the most seller friendly place to be. And it definitely has changed over the years. And a lot of times you're at the mercy of whatever eBay decides. And sometimes that may not necessarily work for what you want to do, what you're trying to do, what you're planning to do. All right. So eBay is best for vintage and collectibles and fine jewelry. You also have the auction format on eBay, which I know a lot of us do not use. However, it can still work depending on the type of jewelry that you're selling. We also have Etsy, Poshmark, Mercari, like I talked about. Again, depending on what type of jewelry you're selling and how you want to sell, and even the price point of the jewelry is going to influence a lot of your decision making when it concerns these specific platforms. So I know, for example, on Etsy, you typically can ask a little bit of a higher price to sell certain types of jewelry pieces on Etsy because over there it's kind of the standard as it relates to what people are willing to pay, versus another platform like eBay. And then Poshmark, well, we know Poshmark has the highest fees out of all the reselling platforms. And so you're going to have to price your jewelry accordingly to make sure your profit margins are still within the range of what you want them to be. So, like I said, all of these platforms have different things that you want to think about, and all of them have good, bad, positive, negative, and so forth. All right. So, but if you are just starting out, if you are learning, I do recommend eBay, but as you will learn throughout this episode, that is not the only platform that I recommend. All right. So we want to make sure that we are giving our jewelry the best opportunity to be seen and to be sold by the right buyer for the right price. All right. So let's get into option number 2. Now, this is something that I have explored off and on throughout the years, your own website. And a lot of you have asked me about this. And I probably need to do a dedicated podcast episode about this. Let me know if you guys would be interested in me talking about what's involved, the pros and cons about selling jewelry on your own website, because I think a lot of you are planning to do that in the new year. Even if you just kind of do it maybe on a smaller scale, I still think it's a good idea and I still think it could work. So, but let me know. So, option number 2 is your own website, right? And when does it really make sense to build your own site versus using a platform? This is something that you've got to think about. We know the options out there are Shopify, Squarespace, WooCommerce, even some Instagram and TikTok shops can work. There's so many ways you can do this. And again, if you are going to do your own website, I think you need to do that in addition to something else, right? Because when you have your own website, you're 100% responsible for driving traffic to that site. So, um, unless you're planning to consistently market and promote, or if you are growing a social media following, you need something in tandem with your own website in order to make it work, because there are fees involved depending on which website builder you use, and you want to make sure that you are able to offset those costs with enough sales of your jewelry. Now, the nice thing about having your own website is that you have total control of everything. But sometimes one of the drawbacks of having your own website is that you have total control of everything. All right. So, again, do you have the time and the energy or even the desire to do this, to do every aspect of the transaction on your own? Or is this something that maybe you just reserve for some of your higher end boutique jewelry pieces? And then maybe you have the bulk of your stuff on eBay, or maybe you sell the bulk of your stuff in a Whatnot live show. So there's a lot of ways you can make this work. And again, it's just depending on what you are willing to do and what you are willing to manage. All right, so like I said, some of the cons are you are responsible for driving all of your own traffic, SEO, ads, social media, promotions, payment processing setup, the website maintenance fees, higher upfront investment of time and possibly money, depending on which website builder you use. But the pros of this are you actually own the customer relationship, which is really nice. Those customers truly are your customers. They're not customers at eBay, Poshmark, or whatnot. When a buyer comes to your website, that is your true customer. You don't have to worry about marketplace fees cutting into your profits. And like I said, you have complete brand control. And the other nice thing, which I think a lot of you should be considering, is building an email list, right? Because when you are growing your business, they always say the money is in the list, right? That's another way for you to have direct access to your buyers um, for very low cost and very low effort. All right. So think about your own website, if it makes sense for you, if that's, something you're planning in the upcoming year as you grow your business. And like I said, I think if you're going to do your own website, you want to do it in tandem with one of these other options that we're going to talk about. Okay. So now let's move on to option number 3, and this is social media selling. Now, I personally believe that social media selling is going to explode in the new year because so many of my jewelry reseller friends are telling me how amazing it is and how much easier it is versus reselling on one of the major reselling platforms. I mean, I can't tell you, like, the jewelry reseller friends of mine who are making the most money and moving the most product are selling on YouTube. All right. And I'm just going to put it out there. Now, I have had a little bit of a mental block, some hesitation doing this, and I don't know why. I really don't. But that is my goal, is to try doing a YouTube sale at some point in the new year. And I don't know why it scares me and it intimidates me so much, but for some reason it does. And I see, some of my friends doing their live shows on YouTube, and they're amazing. They nail it every time, and they have loyal buyers who tune in week after week, ready to spend, ready to shop, and just ready to support. So the nice thing about selling on social media is that you have total control, and you don't have to pay website fees or maintenance fees for the social media platform, right? They're all free. It's free to create an account on YouTube. It's free to create an account on Instagram, Facebook, and then you can just go live and sell your jewelry. Now, I've done an entire episode on how to do this if this is something that you're interested in. But again, like I said, I think that this is going to work in addition to you being somewhere else as it relates to you selling your jewelry. So you could do social media selling in addition to eBay, maybe social media selling in addition to live selling, your own website, whatever the case may be. As a matter of fact, that is how one of the sellers I know, that's what she does. She does live shows on YouTube, but then if somebody wants to actually purchase the jewelry piece, she sends them a link to the piece listed on her website, right? So there's a lot of ways you can do it. Also, I know people who do, like auction style, and they have users bid during the live show. You can do it that way too. So you have total control of how you want to sell your jewelry and the format you want to use in which to sell your jewelry. So it's definitely something to think about. Now, social selling does require you, though, to be active on the platform that you're selling. You can't just only show up, once in a while to do a live sale if you're not actually building up that particular platform, with regular content and, engagement and stuff like that. Now, once you get to a certain level, you can do that, because I do have a friend who does that. That's what they do. They just do live sales once a week, and everybody knows that, but they've been doing it for years. So they pretty much already established that pattern with their followers slash subscribers. So think about, can you consistently nurture that audience on that particular platform? Are you willing to upload other content, related content? So you're not just only doing the live shows, right? Because people like to learn about you, and they like to engage with you, and they want to know a little bit about you, right? So think about, is that something you can maintain? Because a lot of this stuff is maintenance. That's what I've I've learned throughout the years, is that when it concerns selling your jewelry, a lot of it is just maintaining and consistency. That's really what it boils down to. Okay, so let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, this is something that I think is really, really key when it concerns social media selling. Understand that you are relationship building at scale, right? Like, you are building a connection, a relationship with your potential buyers, with your audience at scale, right? And this is something that you can definitely leverage to your advantage. All right, but it does require you being active and consistent, and it does, like, I think you really need to enjoy that, in order to make it work. You don't want to force yourself to do that, because I've seen that and it doesn't work, or it will burn you out. So if you truly do not like creating content, if you do not like showing up consistently, this might not work for you. But some of you are fantastic at this, and it's just something you have not tapped into. So, think about how you can make it work. And you can even do live sales like once a month. You don't have to do them several times a week. Although, again, depending on what your goals are, if you're trying to make the most money and if you have the inventory, you might want to do it a few times a week. Okay. All right. So let's get into option number 4, and that is in-person selling. All right. This is your own storefront. This is selling in antique malls, maybe doing a pop-up shop. I know a lot of those are popular right now because we are in the holiday season. Now, this is what I consider the tangible route, where you are selling in person, face to face with a customer, and they buy their stuff. You don't have to ship it and all that. All right. So you can do this in a variety of ways. You can do this with consignment shops. You can do this in partnership with a local boutique or store. You can also do this in vintage, or some secondhand stores do this. At least there used to be one here where I live, where it was kind of like a hybrid of consignment and thrift store. So you can find, if you have something like that in your area, that could work. All right, so we've got consignment, local boutiques. We also have antique malls. I've done this, or co-op spaces where you rent a booth or a case. You stock it yourself, and the mall handles the transactions for you. Now, remember, this does have a monthly fee, and they usually also take a percentage of each sale. So, but this could be good passive income, if it makes sense for you financially, and if you have the volume. That was the thing that messed me up when I did when I did the antique mall booth. I didn't realize how quickly my stuff would sell. I mean, it was a good problem to have, but I didn't have the volume of inventory to keep up with it. And it became not good. So think about that. That was a lesson I had learned the hard way because I was thinking, oh, this stuff will sit for a few weeks. Well, luckily, surprisingly, the stuff sold very, very quickly, and I didn't have enough inventory to keep restocking. So, but like I said, it was a good problem to have. But if you don't have the volume, depending on what it is, I was selling jewelry bags and individual pieces, and my individual pieces sat, but my jewelry bags usually sold within days. And then I started to become known as the jewelry bag lady at this particular antique mall. And then people were asking, they were leaving notes on my booth saying, please call me when you restock the bags. Like it was crazy. It was good crazy, but it was still crazy. All right, so let's talk about pop-up shops and craft fairs. Now, this is direct sales, immediate payment, face-to-face customer interaction. This is fun, but this can be a lot of work. It takes work to like set stuff up, bring your table, lay out all your stuff. And then depending on how you have it set up, you have to be very careful that, nothing gets stolen or accidentally borrowed or taken. I know that is a problem when people do some of these pop up shops. I went to one last year, or it was earlier this year, and the way the guy had it, he had these clear, flat cases with all of his jewelry in it. So you couldn't just like pick it up. Like he would have had to open it for you so you could say, "Oh, can I see this?" And he would take the piece out. So you may have to invest in something like that depending on where you're going to do this, depending on the craft fair, because you just want to be careful that nobody takes your stuff without paying for it. Unfortunately, that's a real issue that we have to think about. But other than that, I think craft fairs can be a lot of fun, but they're also a lot of work. But I've known jewelry resellers who have made thousands in one weekend. So it's definitely possible. And again, if you have the volume, you can do this. And I would do these in-person options, these in-person selling options. I would do them again in tandem with my own website, maybe some, listings on eBay or whatever. All right. And then finally is your own brick and mortar store. Obviously, this is going to be the biggest investment and commitment because I know a lot of us are probably not here, and a lot of us may not even want to get to this point. I know I don't, but I have talked to one reseller, and that is her goals that she wants to open up her own little boutique. But I know most of us won't want to do that. But I'm just mentioning it as another option and something you may want to think about for the long term. Okay, but you have to make sure that if you do this, the numbers make sense for you, and you're in a good area with a lot of foot traffic and all of that. All right, so now we talked about the four options, and there is another one. The main four options of where to sell your jewelry to make the most money. Reselling platforms is always going to be number one. That's probably the most easy, the most accessible. Number two is your own website. Again, I think that this could work, but it's going to be difficult to make that your only way to sell your jewelry. I think that it can work if you already have a big following and you already have a solid marketing and promotion plan. And then number three, we talked about social media selling, which I think more of us are going to be doing that in the new year because it's just like the potential is just too good to ignore at this point. And there's not a whole lot of competition, and it's basically free. Right? So, if you're not considering it, I highly recommend and encourage you to do so. And then option four is in person selling with some of those things that I just mentioned. Okay, so here we are with option number five. This is where I think we all need to eventually land, and that is the hybrid approach, kind of what I've been hinting at throughout this entire episode. The hybrid approach, which means taking at least two of these options and making them work in whatever way that works for you. Again, a lot of this is going to depend on your time. It's going to depend on your level of commitment. It's also going to depend on where you want to put your focus and your energy. But I'm here to tell you that I think the days are long gone where a reseller only sells on one particular platform or in only one way, and they make the money they want to make. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done. It absolutely can. But why would you not use to your advantage all of the options that are available? All right. And that's kind of how I have always done this. I started on eBay only, then I did eBay and I did the antique mall. Then I did eBay and whatnot, and I kind of still do a little bit. Then I did eBay Poshmark and whatnot. Now I'm thinking about doing social media selling. Oh, I also did my own website. So I was doing eBay and my website and whatnot. Now, I didn't have all of these going all at the same time. I kind of floated in between a variety or several of these at once, depending on what was going on with me at that particular time. But like I said, I think that the days are long gone where you just focus on one platform and that's it. I think the smart resellers are going to be in as many places that they can handle and that they can manage and that actually makes sense. Now, I'm not saying you have to cross list everywhere, although you could. But what I am saying is, create a system where one thing kind of flows or feeds into the other, right? So let's say you're on eBay and you start getting known for certain types of jewelry, or people start following you for certain types of jewelry, and then people start reaching out asking, do you have more of this, and that? Now, I know we're not allowed to promote our own websites on eBay, but I do know some resellers who throw in their business card with every purchase. And I do know that a lot of sellers on Whatnot talk about their websites. Now, I don't know if that's allowed. It probably is not, but I've seen it happen. Or, you can be on social media and talk about everywhere you sell. You can say, hey, find me on eBay, or check out my website. Or you can do both. Or you can say, hey, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss my next live show. Whatever makes sense for you. But and I always preach this on the podcast, it's about having options, and it's about not being at the mercy of any other platform or anybody who decides on a whim that you can't do this, or we're not going to allow that, or you need to change how you do X, Y, and Z. No, we want to be in as much control as we possibly can as it relates to our jewelry reselling business. And that's what this is all about. It's about creating a system and creating a business cycle that works for you and actually helps you make the money you want to make. And I know it's not easy, and I know sometimes it's very frustrating. But like I said, the more options you can give yourself and the more you're going to leverage these options, the better off you're going to be, both in the short term and the long term. All right, so the hybrid approach, making your decision what's going to work. Many successful jewelry resellers use multiple channels, like we talked about. You want to strategically combine some of these approaches and list high value pieces, maybe on eBay or Etsy, and then your everyday items, you can sell them on Whatnot. As a matter of fact, again, I was talking to someone in Jewelry Jumpstart, and she said that that's exactly what she does too. She moves her kind of lower end stuff in a Whatnot show, and then she has her better, higher quality pieces listed on eBay. And I think that's a fantastic way to do it. So, how do you decide what's going to work for you? Here's some things to think about. Number one, your inventory size. Are you just trying to move one piece, or are you trying to make this an ongoing business? Number two, your time availability. Do you want to do something passive like a set it and forget it? Or are you going to be actively selling every single day, or at least maybe full time, 3, 4, 5 days a week? Are you comfortable with technology and social media? Are you comfortable with creating content? Are you comfortable with going live? Are you comfortable with sending invoices and creating your own shipping labels? All of that. There is a little bit of a learning curve. It's not difficult, but that is something you're going to have to be comfortable with doing. Local market opportunities. Are there places in your city, town, state, wherever, where you could maybe set up a table or a booth or a pop up shop and sell your jewelry in one weekend and maybe make a few hundred to a few $1,000s? I know resellers who do that here in Las Vegas. As a matter of fact, one of them, I've had her on the podcast. She does amazing. And like I just sometimes I'm so amazed at how creative the resellers can be and how they are making it work for their lifestyle and their time commitments. All right, and finally, you want to think about the type of jewelry you're selling. Is it vintage, designer, costume, fine? Is it a combination of all of those? Because as we know, sometimes vintage jewelry will do better than fine jewelry, depending on what it is, where we're selling, and exactly what the price is. So think about that too as it relates to your options. And then your financial goals. That's the last thing you want to think about and consider. Are you looking for, quick turnover because you need the cash really fast? Or are you trying to build a long-term sustainable business and you want to reinvest your profits back into the business, either buying better inventory or starting a website, whatever? You're going to have to figure out how that works too, right? So there's a lot of things to consider, but I don't want to discourage you. I just want to encourage you and let you know you can make this and create this in whatever way you want. It's just a matter of making the decisions and then being disciplined to take the action and stay consistent with those actions. All right. So, like I said, there's no wrong answer. People start with reselling platforms just to learn. It's very low risk on eBay or Poshmark or Etsy. And then once you're very solid with that, you can expand to some of the other channels that we talked about today. And then you can figure out what works, because this is a lot of trial and error, unfortunately. But maybe not unfortunately, because you end up wiser, smarter, um, a little bit more mature in your jewelry reselling journey. And you start to have more realistic expectations of what you can and cannot do. And then you can also kind of make projections about what you think could work for you and what may work for your business. Right. And I know there's a few of you out there who are kind of at a crucial point. You're kind of deciding whether or not, should I keep going? Should I give up? Should I make some major changes? And now is the time to really get clear on that, because I know sometimes it's like you're doing something and it's not working, but then you see somebody else doing it and it's working for them. And you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? And I'm here to tell you, you're probably not doing anything wrong. It's just you haven't figured out your formula. You haven't figured out your secret sauce, your secret strategy that's going to work for you. And again, because all of us are so different and our inventory is different and our business is different, we can't really do a cookie cutter style of this business. All right. So think about that too if you're feeling frustrated or discouraged. I'm here to tell you there is an answer for you to make this work, and you can make it work, and you can make the money you want to make. I promise you, you totally can. If you need some help, I just want to remind you, you can join my brand new learning community, which is Jewelry Jumpstart. All right. And it doesn't matter It doesn't matter what level you are in your jewelry reselling journey, but that is where I literally offer you the guidance and the hand holding you may need in order to figure all of this out. Okay, so let me make sure I got everything. So don't be afraid to experiment. I think that's that's where I was going just now. Don't be afraid to experiment and try, because the best approach is the one that you'll actually follow through on consistently, like I've been saying. And sometimes the consistency is the hard part. Like it really is. You kind of have to turn a switch on in your brain to know that that's, this is what I do, this is when I do it, and this is how I do it. Okay? So, that's what I got for you for today's episode, jewelry friends. So, let me know your thoughts. What is your plan concerning where you're going to sell your jewelry in the new year? Or maybe just in general. It doesn't have to be like a new year thing. But where are you going to sell your jewelry? Where are you going to focus your efforts? I would love to read your comments, get your feedback, get your opinions, because I think the answers are going to be different for all of us. I know for me, I've mentioned this before, that my goal is to kind of pivot into more higher end pieces. And so that's going to totally change the game for me when I'm thinking about how and where I'm going to sell my jewelry. So I don't even have it all figured out yet. I really don't. And I think it's going to be a process again of me trying certain things and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. But I'm willing, I'm willing to, figure it all out, just like you are. So I just want to say, I do have a lot of experience that I can share with you, but I don't have all of the answers for every person and every situation. But that's kind of why I created, this platform, is because I'm hoping we can all share our experience and learn from and with each other, so we can all make the money we want to make and have the beautiful, bountiful, successful jewelry reselling business that we all hope and dream of. All right. So, like I said, that's going to be it for this episode. I hope you found it helpful. Like I said, please leave me your feedback. I would love to read it, because I do read and respond to every single comment. And if you are not subscribed, please make sure you are subscribed. Please give this video a thumbs up if you are watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify. I would love it if you could leave us a review, because that helps more people find this information who are looking for it. All right, jewelry friends, thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I'll check in with you again really soon.